key question that is being asked of us of late is, what is this cap on care costs of £86,000 and how would it affect me? This, of course, stems from the increase to national insurance to pay a health and social care levy to meet the cost of social care in an effort to address the ongoing issue with the extreme costs that are being paid for long-term care in England. Now, as we're aware, in the first instance, these costs are going to first be diverted towards the NHS to address the backlog in waiting times and the additional costs that have occurred as a result of the COVID pandemic. What this means in the immediacy is that for the next 2 years, until October 2023, there is not going to be any benefit whatsoever to individuals paying for their care, as the proposed cap will not even come into place until this time. Clearly, therefore, in the first instance, people need to address what they are paying now and not rely on a cap on care that does not come into effect or even begin to come into effect for at least another 2 years. Moving forward from this point, what's important to understand is how this cap on care will directly impact and will actually affect people in practical application. Now, a cap of £86,000, one would assume that if you were paying £860 a week, after 100 weeks of paying for care, you would have hit the cap of £86,000 and nothing else would be due to be paid. Unfortunately, this is simply not the case. If somebody is paying £860 a week, and let's be clear, that would be an exceptionally low cost on average now across England to meet the cost of, say, dementia care. But if someone is paying £860 a week, in fact, it may be that only £400, maybe £500 of that £860 is classed as being care costs, with the balance being made up of board and lodging costs. So in fact, when you have spent £86,000, £500 a week, a total of £50,000 has actually only been spent on your care. So there's a significant amount of £36,000 to continue to pay before you hit this cap on care of £86,000. From that point, you would still have to continue to pay the amount that relates to your board and lodgings even when you hit the cap of £86,000. So it's not quite as clear cut as to say that the most I'm ever going to have to pay for care is £86,000. That simply isn't the case. There would be ongoing costs for board and lodgings, and the early estimations are that it would take around 4 years to hit the cap to then continue to still have to pay the boarding and lodgings element. So someone would have to pay significantly more than £86,000 to reach the adjusted figure of the cap that has been mentioned. What this means is that perhaps whilst the government has come up with a solution that addresses that someone may not have to pay beyond a certain level, which is of course encouraging, it isn't the be-all and end-all fix-it solution that perhaps some people were hoping for that would address the costs of long-term care once and for all. What is also important to consider is that if you have a relative who is paying for care and they require that care because they have complex health needs, perhaps associated with conditions such as dementia, Alzheimer's, or indeed Parkinson's, or any other matter where they have complex health issues, there is still funding available called continuing healthcare funding provided by the NHS, which meets the cost of care in full, irrespective of what the individual's health needs are. This is completely separate to any cap on care or indeed any care costs because it's not a means-tested form of funding. What is required is whether the individual has complex primary healthcare needs, and if they do, they're entitled to funding to meet the cost of their care in full. What I would suggest people take away from the announcements in regards to a cap on care costs is that this is not perhaps an immediate solution and is not perhaps even a long-term solution. People will continue to have to pay care costs, and even with the suggested cap of £86,000, it may well be that costs are significantly beyond that in reality that have to be paid. If you have a relative with primary healthcare needs, i.e. they are complex, intense or unpredictable in their nature, and this may be associated with issues such as dementia and Alzheimer's, then you should contact Compass CHC today for a free, no obligation discussion. We can go through matters and complete an assessment, discussing with you the issues that your relative has in respect of their care needs, and we can provide you with a no obligation view as to whether in fact they would meet the criteria for continuing healthcare funding, and indeed how we could assist you in the process of securing it.